This cat did not want anything to do with me the whole time I was filming the video, but now that the video's done, she won't leave. She won't go away. She won't stop doing this thing she's doing. I started this video, and then I realized I hadn't planned it well enough, and I had to stop and do some planning. And it required 3 pens and 2 highlighters. So, I gotta begin by saying that I really like the Sonogenic, because for like 3 years now, I've been saying that what Yamaha needed to do was take the SHS-10 and release it 10% bigger, and that's literally what they did. So I like that. It's what I've been asking for this whole time. It's an inexpensive keytar with onboard sounds. And I like that. On paper, I really like this keytar. But I have made a list of, like, major problems with the Sonogenic, and here is the list. The Sonogenic makes no fucking sense whatsoever. So I want to begin by saying that I know that this was adapted from existing hardware, and that Yamaha didn't have a lot of say in what buttons go on the keyboard where, because as somebody who has been running a YouTube channel that's almost entirely focused on keytars, I am aware of the existence of other keytars. What I'm saying is that Yamaha did a bad adaptation. This is like the Percy Jackson of keytars, assuming that the Vocaloid one's actually like a good keytar. It's a really bad adaptation. I don't know how good the original Vocaloid keytar is, but what they came up with doesn't make any sense. If you say they had to adapt it from existing technology, so this is the best they can get, that's not a good argument. Every single thing you design has some sort of restriction. You say you have to make a, excuse you, bird, you have to make a, Edwardian maid's dress that's historically accurate, but then you can also take off the actress and put a new dress on them in 10 seconds. Everything has a but. You need to design a car that looks like the lap of luxury, but also gets 35 miles a gallon. Every single thing you design has a but. If you can't handle that but, and you make a bad product, then you made a bad product regardless of how you came to make that. So, let's just get on to the problems with the Sonogenic. So this keytar has groups of buttons. And when you've designed something well and it has groups of buttons, then buttons that you can access close by and simultaneously should have related functions, and buttons that you can't access at the same time should not require both buttons to be pressed. When you're playing a keytar, you've got one hand on the neck doing effects and various other things, and the other hand is playing. That's the basics of keytaring. And that means that if you're controlling something with your right hand, other than the keys, you are not playing music. So your right hand controls should not be required to be manipulated while you're also playing with the right hand. If something's not necessary to be controlled while you're playing, then it doesn't need to be on the left hand. And this keytar is kind of interesting in that you have 4 controls down here, and then you have like 20 controls up here. So we're also going to establish that any control that can be done by the right hand could also be done by the left hand. It's not going to hurt you to have controls on the left hand if you don't have space for them on the right hand, in the same way it would hurt you to have controls on the right hand while you're also playing. The buttons are grouped into sections. I assume because the Vocaloid keytar, they work in little grouped sections. But you have 5 buttons on this area. You have 3 that you manipulate with your fingers, and you have 2 that you manipulate with your thumb. Then you have this group of 4 buttons, which has 2 you manipulate with your fingers and 2 you manipulate with your thumb. We have a pitch bend wheel and a mod wheel, and then down here we have 2 more buttons. On the butt end, we have a wheel that doesn't go all the way around. We've got a slider that has 5 settings, and then we have a wheel that goes roundy, 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 round forever. It's important to remember that not all wheels work the same, and then on the butt end, we have a volume control As far as I can tell, the volume control only works when you're playing through the internal speaker, which is really annoying for people who don't want to just play through the internal speaker. So as I was sitting down to edit this video, I got a tweet from Yamaha who said that my SHS 500 is not broken. It's just that once you plug it into an amp, the volume control disables. So somebody at Yamaha decided that monitoring yourself is not a priority. So everything I said about the volume wheel being in a bad spot, it's going to be largely irrelevant for a decent number of people because the volume control does not exist. Just another little fuck you to everybody who is going to try to play this instrument like it's a real instrument. So that is all the buttons. And we're going to go over real fast how they're very poorly thought out. So these three buttons control your play, your pause, and your backwards and your forwards. And then the buttons on the bottom control your transpose. So this goes up and down a note. Down here, you have the jam button and your sustain button that are right next to each other, even though the jam mode is up here. Again, they can't move the buttons. And then on the other side, you have your octaves that you control with your thumb. The problem with this setup is that if jam mode is running, transpose and octave don't work. So the reason you would have these buttons on your thumb is so that you can control them while you can control them while also controlling these other three. That's the point of putting buttons on your thumb, is to get 5 buttons simultaneously. So why these buttons are linked with buttons that disable their function when they're turned on just screams of, we didn't think this through, we just stuck buttons somewhere. And on the subject of not thinking things through and just sticking buttons somewhere, down here we have the memory, or the menu access, and the exit button. And I talked about the exit button and how awful it is in my other video, but we're gonna go over it again because I fucking hate it. So, this button exits you out of the function menu. If you're in jam mode and you press the exit button, it doesn't do anything. To get out of jam mode, you have to press the jam mode button 5 times. If you go into playback mode and you try to get out of it, it doesn't do anything. You have to hit the playback button 6 times to get rid of the demo songs. And while we're at it, why is it not possible to remove the demo songs? Why is there not a demo mode that I can turn off so that when I press these buttons, they don't start playing some, hip jammin' tunes? So, like, if I'm just in the middle of something and I press this button on accident, it turns on jam mode, and it starts playing this. So now I have to press jam 5 times, and I have to press demo 3 times, and if I don't press demo before I press jam, it turns back on jam mode. And there should be, if there's a button here that says exit, when I press it, it should exit me out of stuff. I would love to press this button and have it set the entire neck to like it would be if I just turned on the instrument. It doesn't need to reset my octave or my transpose, but we'll get into that later. So, I decided to see if I could make this better. So first thing that I did, I made a list of the functions that this Keytar has. Then I made a chart of if they do or don't belong on the left or right hand. Then I took all those functions and I rearranged them on the Keytar in a way that makes significantly more sense. So we're going to go over how I think the Sonogenic should be laid out. We're going to start down on the bottom. The bottom doesn't need to change at all. As much as I don't like selecting the voices with this roundy round wheel, because it's impossible to be precise about it. Actually, no, we are going to change one thing, and that is that the roundy round wheel, you can feel clicks in it, and I think that it should take 2 clicks to change a voice. So you click 1 and it doesn't do anything, you gotta click 2 in a row to change a voice, because that'll make it so much easier to manipulate. Other than that, your effects wheel and your slider down here are all the same. The volume is down here. I would prefer to have the voice change on the butt end and the volume up here, but I understand that this wheel goes roundy round forever and the volume doesn't, so that's not an easy thing to change. So we're gonna give that a pass. We go up the keytar. Jam it on, hang on. We go up the keytar, down to turn off, and start up at the top. So we have this little setup here. One of the things that's very frustrating about the way jam mode currently works is that it only goes in one direction. So if I'm going to be jamming along to my favorite Bowling for Soup song, and I'm jamming with the backing setting, because the backing setting sounds like this when you mash it. And then there's a solo, so when you try to solo on the backing setting, it sounds like this. But when you move to the melody backing, it sounds like this. But I get to the melody setting, and then I have to press the button 5 times to get back to the backing setting. So if I'm playing a song and I want to switch between being backing and doing solos, I have to press this button 6 times in very quick succession. So what we're going to do is we're going to put backwards, play, pause, and forwards, and then these buttons, when you're in jam mode, and I think either like long pressing or double pressing that middle one would be the ideal way to turn on jam mode, but I know that that's hard, so if that doesn't work, you can put jam mode in the function menu, because why would you really need it? Okay, second of all, I just edited this and I realized that there was a big oversight that I made, in that I did not include how to get onto the function menu. So you turn on jam mode, and these 2 buttons cycle between the modes, so that I can go from one finger to backing to melody and backwards without pressing a button 9 times. Ideally, when you're not in jam mode, these buttons would control transpose. I don't know how difficult it is to assign 2 functions to one button, but I do know that you can do it without changing the hardware. And since the SHS-10 had it, and it came out in like 1987, I assume that we still have the technology to do that. So this would be greatly improved by, you still have your play, pause, and go back functions, because that's really handy when you're playing with a backing track or something. I fully appreciate how handy it is to put on a song and be able to skip that around. That's great. Turn off jam mode toolbar. So now we go down to here. This is going to be your Portamento and your sustain. I took Portamento out of this menu and put it back here because I like Portamento a lot. And then back here, where it says octave, you keep that. It says octave. We have your pitch wheel and your mod wheel because you can't do anything about that. But when you press this button, it switches you between modulation being vibrato and modulation being whatever you've set this to. The menu already has this option, but you have to go through the entire damn menu to get there. And then, here we get to the greatest plot twist of all, the exit button remains the exit button. So I would like to amend my previous thing where I said that the exit button was fine and I was leaving it there. In fact, we're getting rid of the exit button, and we're just going to have the menu controlled by pressing it, or incorporating the exit button into also being the menu button. There's a lot of ways you could incorporate the menu that doesn't require two buttons the way it currently is set up, so we're gonna put the menu on the exit button. That was just a big oversight on my part. Because you say, well, aren't all these options in the menu already? Yes, they are. But when you set something in this menu, then you turn off the keytar and turn it back on, it resets it to default. This is a $300 instrument, and it behaves about as well as my Cup of Noodles Keytar. Not that I don't love the Cup of Noodles Keytar, but I did not get it because it's a great Keytar. Got it because it's fucking funny. So there we go. That is how I think Yamaha should set up this thing. If they can figure out how to do that by just like... If anybody has got ideas about how to hack the firmware of the Sonogenic, it says in the manual that you should not attempt to modify this instrument. Which means, of course, I am going to attempt to modify this instrument. Because I want all of this to be functional and useful. I want to be able to use all these buttons, instead of them just kind of being awkward. And we incorporated jam mode in an effective way. Yeah, maybe the Keytar kitty. You helped. Do you want to play the Keytar again? You want jam? Okay. You want jam? Come on. Yeah, you see how annoying that is? Why do some menus function one way and other menus function the other way? How did we get to this state? How did we end up here? Why is it that I'm using the same instrument but I don't know how to use every menu? Why do I have to learn how to use every menu? And actually, while we're at it, there's one more thing. Chord Tracker. The Chord Tracker app. Why doesn't it have an option for me to start up a track that has a metronome, and then I put chords on it to send them to the Sonogenic? Because that would make jam mode actually useful. So I tell it a chord progression, and then while I'm just noodling on it, I can come up with good ideas because I have the instrument already controlling what chords I play. It makes sure that my melody stays with my chord progression. Why is that not an option? That seems like it'd be really easy. All they would have to do is program in like a cheap backing track or a metronome. So the SHS-10 will save my chord sequencing, but unfortunately I have to play it over the SHS-10's rhythm tracks, which are not great. So if I could make my own rhythm track and then build my own chord sequence and then I can play over it like I could with the SHS-10, that'd be fantastic. Yamaha, get on that. In summary, the Yamaha Sonogenic Keytar makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Unfortunately, the cat is on my lap, so we're just going to be stuck here until the camera times out, because I'm not going to get up and interfere with the cat. While I'm editing, I do want to add one more postscript, and that is my major concern about the Sonogenic. Apart from, this. My major concern about the Sonogenic is that because it's non-intuitive and it's already a niche thing, it's being marketed at people who already don't want to buy musical instruments, and it's getting mocked by people who do know how to play them, even people who are seriously considering buying Keytars. I'm really concerned that if the Sonogenic is not a commercial success, it's going to wreck our chances of having other Keytars be released, because companies are going to see the Sonogenic not succeeding as there being no market for Keytars, when in fact it's just that the Keytar community is allowed to have standards in the same way that every other community is allowed to. But when you're a niche thing and one of your things does not succeed, then the whole niche gets blamed on it. I'm really worried that people are going to say, well, an entry-level Keytar isn't marketable because the Roland AX Edge was $1,000 and it sold really well, and the Sonogenic was $300 and it didn't, so let's make all future Keytars $2,000. I'm just really hoping that's not gonna happen.